the day you decide to finally get serious about money, is, statistically, the most financially dangerous day of your month. Not the day before payday, not when the credit card statement hits, not when something breaks and the account is already thin. The day you start the budget. Monday morning, the decision is locked in. This time it's real. You cut the food delivery, cancel the subscriptions you haven't opened in 3 months, delete the shopping apps from the home screen. By Wednesday, something shifts, a clean, controlled feeling, almost foreign. Like you finally got a grip on the part of your life that kept slipping. Thursday night, you're ordering food delivery. And here's what you've probably done with that information, treated it as a character verdict. I have no willpower. I can't stick to anything. I'm just bad with money. That story, the one you've been telling yourself for 2, 3, maybe 5 budget cycles, is wrong. Not slightly off, completely wrong. And it's keeping you trapped in a loop that has nothing to do with your character and everything to do with how your brain physically responds to financial restriction. What happens between Monday and Thursday is not a willpower failure. It is a mechanical sequence. And the key word there is mechanical. Think of it like a spring. Push a spring down and it stores force. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't respond to motivational content. The physics are indifferent. Press the spring harder, it stores more force. Release the pressure, the spring fires, and the harder you press, the faster it launches. Your budget is that spring. Every cut, every restriction, every canceled subscription is pressure being stored. And the Thursday night food delivery, that's not a failure, that's the spring releasing. When you see the exact sequence, how the compression builds and when the release fires, you can interrupt it before it happens. That's what this is about. Here's the specific timing that most financial advice never gets to. Consumer behavior researchers have tracked spending patterns across thousands of participants in multiple budget cycles. The finding is consistent. Tighter restriction in period 1 reliably produces higher spending in period 2. Not occasionally, not in certain demographics, reliably across the board. But the window matters more than most people realize. The highest risk period for overspending after a budget decision is not week 3, when motivation fades. It's the 24 to 48 hours immediately following the restriction decision itself. The moment you decide to stop impulse spending and get serious about savings, a biological clock starts. You're almost never aware it's running. There's a specific reason for the timing. And once you understand it, the Thursday night delivery stops looking like weakness and starts looking like a machine running exactly on schedule. Your brain has been running the same operating system for roughly 200,000 years. In that operating system, there is one protocol for detecting scarcity, and it has 2 phases. Phase 1, restriction mode. Conserve resources, reduce expenditure, stay tight. Phase 2, feast window. When access reopens, consume aggressively because the next famine is unknown. Store what you can when you can. A budget is, to that 200,000-year-old system, a famine signal. You're not restricting food delivery and Amazon carts. You're telling a survival system that has kept your species alive through actual scarcity that resources have become limited. And that system immediately begins phase 2 planning, not consciously, not in the part of your brain that understands long-term savings goals and compound interest, in the part that once kept your ancestors alive when the food ran out in January. That part doesn't respond to financial literacy. It doesn't update for the modern economy. It waits. The spring compresses. The tighter the budget, the more aggressive the cuts, the stricter the tracking, the more force builds underneath. And the release doesn't feel like failure. It feels like relief. Like you've been holding your breath since Monday, and Thursday night is finally the exhale. This is why people with strong willpower often have the largest spending rebounds. They press the spring harder. The physics don't care about the effort. They only measure the force. Here is the inversion that changes everything about how to approach this. The restriction isn't the solution. The restriction is the pressure source. Every budget built purely on cutting, spend less, track harder, cancel more, be more disciplined, isn't addressing the rebound problem. It's feeding it. Tighter spring, larger release. More aggressive budget, more explosive spending surge on the other side. And cycle after cycle, the person doesn't build better financial habits. They build a more compressed spring and a louder character verdict. I keep proving I can't do this. They were using a tool that guarantees the outcome they were trying to prevent. There's a second layer to this that's harder to see. Every failed budget cycle leaves psychological residue. The self-labeling accumulates. I'm bad with money. I have no self-control. I always do this. Each Monday to Thursday cycle adds to that story. And once the story is established, the moment you slip stops being a data point in a mechanical sequence and becomes confirmation of a personal truth. Confirmed personal truths don't create motivation to adjust the approach. They create permission to stop trying. A spring that gets released and immediately recompressed, harder, with more frustration than the last time, stores more pressure than before. Each failed budget cycle doesn't return you to where you started. It returns you to a higher compression point, more spending habits working against you, more psychological debt making the next attempt harder to sustain. This is why people who have tried everything often overspend more erratically than people who never tracked a budget at all. The spring has been pressed and released so many times, it fires at smaller and smaller triggers. And here's the piece nobody talks about. The harder you worked during the restriction period, the more the release feels earned. You were disciplined all week, cut everything, tracked every dollar, practically a different person. That discipline built psychological credit, and at some point the survival brain starts treating the release as payment for services rendered. The Thursday food delivery isn't impulsive anymore. It's a transaction. You earned it. This is what behavioral economists call self-licensing. The good behavior earlier in the week creates internal permission for the spending behavior later. It's not irrational. It's a very logical system operating on the wrong set of values. What actually interrupts the sequence isn't more discipline. It isn't stricter tracking or a stronger commitment to the budget. It's a friction window. A friction window is a structural gap, designed in advance, when you're calm and rational, between the moment the spending impulse fires and the moment money actually leaves your account. 3 seconds for a small purchase. 3 hours for anything over $30. 24 hours for anything over $100. The specific intervals matter less than the principle. You are designing a delay before the transaction closes, not trying to suppress the impulse with willpower in the moment. Here's why this interrupts the biology rather than fighting it. The spending impulse is generated by the fast, old, survival mode brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part that knows your savings goal and remembers what you're building toward, is slower. Not absent, slower. A friction window is just time. It's giving the rational brain enough time to come online before the spring fully releases into the credit card. The first friction window installed in your highest-risk spending category typically produces results within the first week. Not because you worked harder, because the spring released into a gap instead of into a transaction. The sequence has 3 interruption points. The friction window addresses the third, the moment the impulse fires. The second is budget design itself, building in scheduled release valves that give the survival brain a sanctioned feast window, so the famine signal doesn't build toward an uncontrolled detonation. And the first is the timing of the restriction decision, because starting an aggressive budget on a Monday after a stressful week doesn't just set a financial goal. It compresses the spring at maximum pressure and starts the 24 to 48-hour countdown while the friction window is still uninstalled. Understanding which point in the sequence you're in changes what the next action actually is. The next time Monday morning arrives with that clean, controlled feeling, and it will notice the spring, not as a metaphor, as a mechanical reality running in the background of your brain right now, indifferent to your intentions. Your budget didn't fail because you lack discipline. The spring released because springs do that. Every time, on a predictable timer. The only question is whether the friction window is in place before the countdown ends. For most people, it still isn't, which means Thursday night isn't a character flaw. It's just physics running on schedule.